Hi everyone, and welcome to week 9 of our Sweet Childhood Memories Sew Along, hosted by Pat Sloan at her website ilovetomakequilts.com. This week we want to know about your toy box. What childhood toys did you have? Were you the envy of your neighborhood, or were you the one that went to someone else's place because their toys were always cooler? If you haven't done so already, jump over to Pat's website, download this week's free pattern, come back here, and I'll show you how to do it. No changes or alterations to this week's cutting instruction, folks, as we are simply making our half square triangles with a light or background fabric, a medium fabric, and a dark fabric. Let's go. So to begin, we are going to make our half square triangles, which is the base unit for all of the blocks in this section. So to make the half square triangles, we're going to take our background squares and draw a diagonal line corner to corner. On each of those, we're going to pair them right sides together with our other feature fabric, and then we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch on each side of our drawn line. With those all sewn now, I'm just going to give these a quick press before I cut them in half along our drawn line and then press again towards the darker of our two fabrics. As we started with 5 squares each for our half square triangles, this does yield 10 units and we only need 9 for this block. So you'll see me throughout this process sit one to the side that I'll put in my part center, use on the back of the quilt, who knows. So to trim down the half square triangles, as you may or may not know, I do prefer to do them 2 at a time because I have little patience and I like quick results. So to do that, I make sure that I've got my seam nice and tightly nested. I then use my 6.5 square with the diagonal line placed on my stitching line. I ensure that I have enough fabric outside my required trim down measurement before I trim the first 2 sides. I then rotate the block and I place my ruler back, ensuring once again that my diagonal line is along my stitching. I then put the trim down measurement required on the freshly 2 cut sides, and I trim the final 2 sides. Wash, rinse, repeat till we have 9. We now need to place the sew and flip on the corner of all 9 of our half square triangles that we've just created. Throughout this section of the video, I'll be showing you the 2 ways that I do these, being the traditional method and by using the folded corner clipper from Creative Grids. To do the traditional method, we take a pencil or your favorite marking tool and we draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on the back of our smaller squares. We then place this right sides together in the corner of our half square triangle, making sure that we've got it on the feature fabric side and not the background. We then make sure that all of our edges are lined up nice before placing a pin in that and taking it to the machine, and I am going to sew just to the right of that drawn line. I'm going to do 5 of those this way, so watch through while I do that, and then I'll join you back at the cutting mat for the folded corner clipper method. I like to use the folded corner clipper from Creative Grids because it does make this process a little easier. In this instance, we're going to use the tool to cut our corner fabric off before we sew, rather than drawing the line, sewing on the line, and then cutting the fabric away. So to do this, we put our smaller square on the top of our half square triangle unit. We line up our measurement that is the same size as that smaller square, in this instance 2.5, on the markings that you can see on the ruler there, and we slice off that extra fabric. This leaves you with a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance, which we take this to the machine and sew, and then at a later step, when I meet you at the cutting mat, we will press this out and we can move on. With all of our sew and flip pieces now sewn on, we take this to the pressing mat, and for the ones that we did in the traditional method, we are just going to check that all of our edges still line up, press that into place, and then trim away the back 2 layers. As I'm going through this process, you will notice that I set a couple of them aside, as you'll see now in this close-up, because I didn't get the stitching line right. None of my edges meet, so I am going to unpick that and redo it. But moving through the rest, they all seem okay. I think I end up with 3 that I redo. And then with the ones that we did with the folded corner clipper tool, we simply just press the piece out. As you would have seen throughout that process, I decided to redo these using the folded corner clipper tool. I was too lazy to change my sewing foot back over to the one I used for the traditional method sewing, and now all I'm doing is trimming the back 2 layers away from the first 2 that I did via the traditional method. Now we're going to move on to final block construction, and we simply need to lay this out in a 9-patch fashion as per the pattern. As this is now a 9-patch unit, traditional 9-patch construction method applies, where we start by sewing together all of our vertical seams before doing the last 2 horizontal seams. This week I don't have any tricky pressing tricks for you, sorry for that faux pas, as it's just a matter of work out what worked best as I was going through it. So please enjoy, and our block will soon be done. As you could see towards the end there, I just pressed all of my seams in one direction, either up or down. I didn't really put too much thought in it or do any of my spinning the seams or clipping the seams or anything, because it was just easier to press to one side. As always, thanks for joining me again this week, folks. Don't forget, hit the like button, share my video with a friend, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Most importantly, tickle that little bell icon to be notified of all my future releases. And I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.